Welcome back to Peaceful Soul, a space where we come together to find calm in the mind, nurture mental health, and build confidence in every moment of life. If this is your first time visiting the channel, I want you to feel like you've just stepped into a safe space, where every story and every insight isn't just backed by science, but also feels like a real conversation with a friend. And today, we're diving into a topic you've probably faced before, but maybe never put into words: the fear of speaking off the cuff. That moment when you're called on unexpectedly and your whole body betrays you. Do you remember the last time that happened to you in a meeting? Suddenly your heart started pounding, your throat went dry, your hands turned cold, and your mind was racing with thoughts, yet no words came out. That silence might have lasted just a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity, making you want to disappear. The truth is, you're not alone. Research in the US shows that over 70% of adults admit they feel anxious about impromptu speaking, and this fear doesn't just interrupt work. It chips away at self-confidence and mental well-being. I'll never forget a medical student I once met, named David. He was brilliant. He could recall every detail from 1,000-page textbooks, but the moment he stood up to present, he froze. His voice shook, sweat poured down, eyes glued to the floor. After class, David came to me with tears in his eyes and asked, "Doctor, I know I have the knowledge, so why can't I open my mouth?" That question haunted me for years, because it captures what so many others silently struggle with. The truth is, I used to be just like David. I still remember the first time my professor called on me during a clinical meeting. I knew the answer. I had read every detail of the patient's case, but in that moment, my mind went completely blank. My mouth locked up, and I just stood there, frozen like a kid caught doing something wrong. That shame and stress stayed with me for days. And that's when I realized, anxiety in communication isn't weakness, it's simply the brain doing what it thinks it's supposed to do. See, our brains are designed to protect us, not embarrass us. Deep inside, there's an alarm system called the fight or flight response. Thousands of years ago, it kept our ancestors alive when facing wild animals. But today, with no predators lurking, that same system still fires, even when all we have to do is answer a question in a meeting. Racing heartbeat, shallow breath, tense muscles, words gone. That's not weakness. That's your brain mistakenly thinking you're in danger. The good news? You can retrain that response. Just like you train your body to get stronger, you can train your mind to handle these moments with calm. In this video, I'll walk you through 3 key things. 1. Why we're so afraid of speaking off the cuff. 2. Science-backed tools that can transform stress into strength. 3. Real stories from everyday Americans: a teacher in Texas, an engineer in California, and a single mom in New York, who turned their fear into confidence and peace of mind. But before we start, I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself, when was the last time you were caught off guard and didn't know what to say? Maybe it was your boss asking your opinion, or a date where you wanted to make a good impression, or even a casual chat with a neighbor. Think back to that racing heart, that tight chest, that anxious silence. When you do, you'll realize something powerful: you are not alone. And from those very moments, you can start changing how you respond. Here's the beautiful part: overcoming this fear doesn't just make you a better speaker. It makes you happier and healthier. Research shows that people who build confidence in communication are less likely to experience depression. They build stronger relationships, and they feel more satisfied with life overall. So if you've ever lost sleep over a presentation, stayed silent out of fear of saying the wrong thing, or missed out on an opportunity because you couldn't face the spotlight, I want you to stay with me until the end of this video. Because I believe this: you are stronger than your fear. And together, we're going to walk this journey toward reclaiming your voice and your confidence. When people talk about the anxiety of speaking on the spot, most assume it comes from being shy or lacking confidence. But neuroscience shows it's far more complex. Brain scans using fMRI at the Montreal Neurological Institute reveal that when people speak in front of an audience, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes twice as active compared to speaking one-on-one. In other words, your body isn't just nervous in your head, it's literally reacting as if you were in real danger. And once you understand that, You can stop blaming yourself and start looking at anxiety through a scientific lens. The first barrier is the fear of being judged. Humans evolved to survive in groups, so our brains are hypersensitive to the gaze and opinions of others. A survey by the American Psychological Association found that over 73% of adults admit to feeling extreme anxiety when many eyes are on them at once. Take Sarah, an elementary school teacher in Texas. Even though she prepares her lessons carefully, she loses sleep before parent meetings because she's terrified they'll think she's incompetent. Researchers call this the social mirror effect. We imagine everyone scrutinizing our flaws, which in turn activates the body's full stress response. The second barrier is the pressure to be perfect. Psychologists call this a variation of perfectionism, which has strong links to social anxiety. A 2019 study at Stanford University found that people with perfectionist tendencies during communication had cortisol, the stress hormone, levels 25% higher than average. That means their bodies stayed in fight or flight mode far longer, even during normal conversations. Mark, an engineer from California, knows this all too well. He often spends entire nights preparing for short presentations. But if he stumbles on a single word, he beats himself up for weeks. Science calls this overmonitoring, when your brain focuses so much on self-checking that there's no room left for creativity or flow. The third barrier is the dreaded mental blank. Psychology explains this through the concept of cognitive load. Under stress, the brain diverts energy to the heart, lungs, and muscles to prepare for danger, which means the prefrontal cortex, responsible for language and reasoning, gets less power. A Harvard experiment simulated this. 62% of participants froze when asked to respond quickly in front of an audience, even though they had rehearsed thoroughly. Linda, a single mom in New York, describes her mind going blank like a whiteboard every time she held a microphone, even though minutes earlier she could recall every point she wanted to make. It's a vivid reminder that anxiety can literally switch off your ability to speak. What makes this harder is that these three barriers rarely appear alone, they overlap, forming a vicious cycle. The fear of judgment fuels the need to be perfect. The pressure to be perfect increases the chance of going blank. And every blank out feeds the fear of judgment even more. Experts call this the communication anxiety cycle. Left unchecked, it can spiral into social avoidance, depression, and deep harm to mental health. Many people who walk into therapy start with, "I'm just afraid of speaking." But over time, they lose confidence, withdraw from groups, and end up isolated. Here's the good news. Simply naming these invisible barriers is already half the battle. Research from the University of Michigan shows that people who can identify and label their anxious emotions reduce their physiological stress levels by 33% compared to those who can't. In other words, awareness is the first step to taking back control. Once you see anxiety as a signal, not as a flaw, you can begin retraining your brain with practice and science. If those three invisible barriers are the reasons you tremble and lose confidence, here's the good news. Science also gives us powerful tools to overcome them. And I'm not talking about quick fix tricks like fake it till you make it, forcing a smile, or imagining the audience in silly outfits. Instead, we'll focus on three methods that have been studied and proven effective: regulated breathing, cognitive reframing, and gradual exposure. These don't just calm your nerves, they literally rewire your brain to turn stress into fuel. The first tool is regulated breathing, breathwork. Simple, but incredibly effective. When you're anxious, your breathing becomes short and shallow, which triggers the sympathetic nervous system, your body's danger alarm. But if you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, and exhale slowly for 6 to 8 seconds, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calming switch. Stanford research shows this type of breathing can lower heart rate by up to 15% in just 2 minutes and reduce cortisol levels. Chris, a young attorney in Chicago, used this before every court hearing. Within weeks, he started calling it his personal calm button he could press anytime. The second tool is cognitive reframing. The real problem with anxiety isn't that you don't know what to say, it's that you misinterpret your body's signals. When your heart races, most people think, "I'm failing." But a famous Harvard study found that when participants were taught to see a fast heartbeat as their body's way of fueling them, They performed better in presentations and felt less anxious. Amanda, a student from Florida, used to see trembling hands as proof she was weak. After practicing reframing, she told me, "Now when my heart pounds, I tell myself it's my body giving me strength." That small shift in perspective turned fear into energy. The third tool is gradual exposure. This is a gold standard in behavioral psychology. Fear doesn't shrink when you avoid it, it shrinks when you face it step by step. Research from the National Institute of Anxiety Disorders found that people who approached their fear gradually reduced their anxiety by 40% in just 6 weeks. James, a software engineer in Seattle, started small, just asking one question during a team meeting. A month later, he was presenting his project in front of 50 colleagues. Smiling instead of sweating, his brain had learned, "I'm safe." When you combine all 3 tools, breathwork to calm the body, reframing to shift your mindset, and gradual exposure to build safe experiences, something amazing happens. Anxiety doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It changes color. From the urge to run away into the energy to break through. That's the same secret athletes use before a big game. They don't eliminate stress. They use it to sharpen focus and unlock strength. And here's the truth. No one changes overnight. But if you stay patient and treat every shaky moment as practice, you'll be surprised at how far you can go. More importantly, this journey isn't just about speaking better on the spot. It's about strengthening your mental health. Because once you learn to master your body's reactions and reshape your emotions, you're not just more confident in front of an audience, you're freer in your own life. I want you to remember this. Overcoming the fear of speaking off the cuff isn't just something you read about in books or see in a lab experiment. It's happening every single day in the lives of ordinary Americans, people who used to tremble, who used to avoid the spotlight, but eventually discovered how to turn anxiety into strength. And when you hear their real stories, you'll realize something powerful. If they can do it, so can you. In fact, research shows that nearly 77% of American adults have experienced fear of public speaking, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. NIMH. So you are far from alone on this journey. The first story is about Emily, an elementary school teacher in Texas. Emily loved her students and her job, but whenever she had to attend parent-teacher meetings, she felt as if she were standing in a courtroom on trial. Every glance from a parent felt like a judgment. Emily began practicing regulated breathing, a tool backed by neuroscience. A 2017 study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that just 5 minutes of slow-paced breathing can significantly lower cortisol, the stress hormone, and improve mental focus. Emily practiced these breathing exercises during short classroom breaks. At the next meeting, although she was still nervous, her voice was steadier. One parent even said, "You seem so confident today." That moment helped Emily realize that fear doesn't disappear, but it can be tamed. Next, there's David, a software engineer from California. David was a genius at coding but became invisible during team meetings. The moment he was asked to speak, his face turned red and his words stumbled. After seeking therapy, he learned about cognitive reframing. This technique, studied at Harvard Business School, teaches people to reinterpret physical symptoms of anxiety. Instead of seeing a racing heart and shaking hands as signs of failure, participants were told to view them as the body fueling up for performance, and their presentation skills improved dramatically. David adopted this mindset and said, "I imagine my heart like a race car engine revving up. The faster it beats, the more power I have." Within a few months, he was confidently presenting his projects to senior management without avoidance. Another story comes from Rachel, a single mom in New York. Rachel dreaded holding a microphone at community meetings. Her body betrayed her, shaky hands, dry mouth, and a blank mind. But Rachel chose gradual exposure, a method rooted in behavioral psychology. In fact, exposure therapy is recognized by the American Psychological Association, APA, as one of the most effective treatments for anxiety. Rachel started small, speaking a single sentence in a group of friends, then working her way up to a PTA meeting. Each small victory trained her brain to recognize, "I'm still safe." 1 year later, Rachel stood up in front of over 200 people at a town hall meeting, and received a round of applause. The final story is about Michael, a veteran living in Seattle. After leaving the military, Michael struggled to reintegrate into civilian life. He avoided gatherings, and his fear of speaking in groups deepened his isolation. But Michael joined a group therapy program, where he practiced in a safe environment. He used all three tools: regulated breathing, cognitive reframing, and gradual exposure. A study in the Journal of Anxiety Disorders has shown that combining multiple anxiety reduction strategies can rewire the brain faster than using just one. Within 6 months, Michael wasn't just speaking with ease, he became a facilitator at community events for fellow veterans. He shared, "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm not trapped by fear anymore." The takeaway from these stories is simple but profound. None of them were perfect from the start. They all shook, they all stumbled, they all wanted to quit at some point. But through persistence, small experiments, and the courage to take one step at a time, they changed their lives. Science can hand you the tools, but only you can choose to use them. And when you find yourself trembling, remember this: you are walking the very same path as Emily, David, Rachel, and Michael, ordinary people who achieved something extraordinary. You know what? This whole journey proves something important. The fear of speaking off the cuff isn't a sign of weakness, it's proof that you're human. That you're connected to your emotions. Sometimes the brain builds invisible walls: fear of being judged, the pressure to be perfect, or those dreaded blank moments. But science shows us those walls aren't permanent. They're just temporary reactions, and with patience and the right tools, you can break through them. From the stories of Emily, David, Rachel, and Michael, we can clearly see that anyone can change. They once trembled, stayed silent, and avoided the spotlight, but they eventually turned anxiety into strength. The biggest lesson is this: you don't have to be perfect from the start. You just have to start. One deep breath, one new perspective, one small step each day. These simple things can become the solid foundation for lasting confidence. Mental health isn't about eliminating anxiety completely, it's about learning to live in harmony with it. Every time you dare to speak up, even in a small group, you're giving your mind a dose of healing. Each action, no matter how small, teaches your brain, "I'm capable, I'm safe, I'm worthy," and those moments build a stronger, calmer, more resilient you. So if you're hearing this right now and see a piece of yourself in these stories, take it as a gentle reminder: you are not alone. Choose one small action this week. Maybe it's 2 minutes of breathing practice each day, or having the courage to share one sentence in a meeting. Don't wait until you feel completely ready, because readiness only comes once you take action. And if this video brought you value, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs a little more confidence today. I'd also love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. What's a moment when anxiety held you back? And where do you want to start your change? The Peaceful Soul community is here to listen, support, and walk alongside you.